Welcome to the Revenue Rewired podcast, hosted by StringCan Interactive's visionary CEO, Jay Feitlinger, and no-nonsense COO, Sarah Shepard. We're here to accelerate your revenue and give your marketing purpose. All right, well, hello and welcome everybody to this next episode of the Revenue Rewired podcast. Hi, Jay.
How's it going there in France? I believe you are right now.
Yeah, I actually was working with my Claude travel person, and I was like, Claude, am I going to get bored of all this Bavarian appearance stuff? I've got like three places, I think, with this
First of all,
sort
please
of.
stop. You're asking. Do you hear yourself?
Hey, it's been so helpful. Like I literally spent 10 hours chatting with it about wine, and I feel so much less stupid.
Oh my God. You're a
It's
snob.
been, I know I've got that, and then there's like you actually going to real psalm classes. So
Yeah,
I've got
seriously.
the $20 a month version.
Claude Pro.
I know, but it's been a nice change of pace. I got to be honest. Like today I got a little cold and I'm like, Sarah, suck it up because as soon as you get home, you're going to die for like
This
three
is
months.
it's disgusting here, but okay.
Oh, well, I miss it in some ways, but
Yeah.
well, today we want to talk about why you should play hardball with your sales team. And what we try to do for you guys is come up with topics that are really relevant and timely and appropriate. And Jay, you were on a networking call and you got kind of blown away. You get on a lot of calls. I mean, you're freaking on calls, I don't know, like what, a dozen times a week minimum.
Oh, at
And I
least,
think
yeah,
it's
sadly.
very rare. Yeah, it's rare that you tell me someone really surprised you with a question. It kind of reminds me of when I am doing recruiting and an interviewee asks me a really smart question. It kind of reminded me of that. So why don't you tell our audience why this question was so mind-boggling?
Yeah, I guess those that are listening to this story might seem like, wait, I don't get how this ties into basically, working with your sales team more. But trust us, follow the process. There's a logic behind this. Obviously, me and Sarah always have convos before the podcast to kind of get aligned on what we wanted to talk about, and that's when she brought up this topic. So high level, I was on a networking call, as Sarah mentioned. And clearly, the gentleman who I was talking with did his research. I mean, not just like, hey, I saw that, StringCan has been around for 16 years and you guys do X, Y, and Z in the B2B space. He was actually like very curious, which got me kind of excited. But one of his first questions he asked me was, why sales and marketing alignment? Because I thought you guys were a marketing agency. I don't even understand like why you've been bringing up sales. And so of course I had to ask him back a question. Well, why don't you think it's important? And he's like, well, a marketing and agency that's focusing on B2B and demand generation, your job ends when the lead is get received by the marketing team, and that's their job now internally to get with the salespeople. And I'm like, oh my goodness.
Well, and
Um,
he goes, "Why would you choose to do that? That is so hard."
Yeah, exactly what he said. Now, I know I'm being a little silly sounding with this whole thing, but it threw me off because I sadly have never been asked that in 16 years, nor have I made a big deal about that when I'm talking to new potential clients that want our help. And so I walked him through high level of the story that took a few minutes to explain, but I basically walked him through like, hey, there's a context behind this where I used to work at MCI WorldCom, and the owner of that firm did a lot of fraudulent things that those that are familiar with the WorldCom and Enron days. And I just saw so many people lose their jobs, and that's what got me into the space of becoming an entrepreneur because I wanted to control my own destiny. And before I launched StringCan, I think it was six other different businesses that I had launched, and some I sold, or I think I closed one or two of them that weren't performing well. But high level, the thing that really always intrigued me is the value of me understanding from a sales perspective, how to talk with customers and develop relationships and ask really smart questions, and how valuable that data is passing it back to marketing. And I just walked him through the analogy and telling him that story that, I think the reason why we do such a good job in marketing is we invest so much energy in meeting with our client sales teams and asking really smart questions and learning from them because we found that the data and the context that the our client sales teams have is just so powerful compared to looking at like, marketing analytics and marketing reporting and brand guidelines and that kind of stuff. Because they're getting the really hard questions. They're having to deal with the, conflicts. They know what tools or collateral or whatever process they need to have them get a better chance of closing the deals. And so if we can dive in really deep into the world of sales, it powers the marketing team so much better. And then I went through this whole entire discussion with him. And so our conversation quickly went into this very interesting chat, how much value he found in hearing that story, and how much benefit he had now for his own business. And so it just was really fun for me. When I got off the call, I was so excited about it because, again, I hadn't been asked that kind of question that way before. It started out by him sounding, as Sarah alluded to, him making it sound like we're either distracted or doing things that are just way too hard and not needed for the kind of business we had. Once I explained the value it brought to us and doing a better job of delivering value to our clients, he fully got it. And that was really fun for me.
It makes me think of I had a chat with a candidate for one of our roles, and it was really smart the way they talked about like attribution and analytics and data. And I think like talking about sales numbers is just another piece of data, including revenue for the marketing team. And it's really started opening my eyes a lot to marketing data is not just the beforehand. It's not just the like a piece of the funnel or whatever. It's really like understanding the effects of marketing is part of the data. And, it's like you don't just track your calories, you also track your weight, which is the outcome of like one of
Hmm.
those metrics, for example. And so it's the same kind of approach. And I think I'm starting to see a little less resistance in our industry with our clients. And it's actually becoming, I think, a little easier for them to share some of these numbers. It's not as taboo. I think to be fair to them, a lot of clients have had challenges in the past with like just being able to share the data. It was owned by someone who held it under this total lock and key situation, but being able to then work through all of the other complicated pieces of marketing like attribution and your funnel breakouts and frankly effectiveness or spend, it's kind of like you're just guessing because you don't know if you're quote losing weight. If that makes sense, if you kind of see it the same way with the whole data piece too.
I do, and I think to your point there, when you were talking about that weight, I totally agree with you on that. But also, there's secondary, tertiary benefits as well. It's like you think about like, and now you can sleep better, and so then you're less cranky in the morning, and then you have more brain power. It's just how all that's connected. So I love that you use the analogy of the kind of the fitness health space because I think it's that or like building a house. It's just so smart. And what's funny is as you guys were talking, I was thinking about, I wish I could say this was strategic, but I think no one knew that AI would get as popular as it has the last couple of years. But you think about how many of our clients are feeling so concerned that they're behind with like AEO and SEO and GEO and stuff. But I think what's really kind of cool is when we're looking at the data right now, for the clients that are embracing a lot of this and this kind of mindset of how we want to produce marketing, deliverables, it's so much focused on the needs of the sales team. And so a lot of our content that we'll produce won't be like typical generic nonsense, but instead it's answering questions. And I think back to your point, I believe that now that I'm thinking about it, the whole like AI impact on marketing, this kind of topic we're talking about of, like the playing the hardball mindset of like marketing has to have really tough conversation with sales, understand and pull out from them all the interesting insights because then it could turn into this amazing content marketing strategy and thought leadership around producing content that's basically going to be exactly what all the LMs want. And so I'm just super excited about that because again, things somehow just seem to work out well for us around all of that. I think it's because we've always been since day one so strategic and innovative and trying to get a step ahead. But when we're thinking about this whole sales thing, I think that's probably the reason why it's like not a huge like turning a yacht on a dime. Like we're just maybe course correcting a little bit with all the changes happening in innovation, but that sales data and knowledge from them is making the marketing even more powerful and answering the right questions, which obviously, again, all the LMs will, I think, appreciate and gives our clients a better chance of even showing up and feeling like they're not only ready, but also being visible across all the various different AI platforms.
I have to ask you a question because it might be, I think it's tangentially acceptable with this topic, but what we're hearing from even clients who are being asked this question, we're seeing it as well with a bunch of our huge audits that we're doing for some clients. Do you think that there has now become this almost like gated barrier for the buyer, whereas you're speaking two different languages? One is I'm speaking the language that the LLM can interpret to the searcher, and I'm also still trying to speak to the searcher who has not embraced AI as a search tool. Are we kind of at a crossroads that we're trying to
That's
do two things at
interesting.
once? Because that's kind of what I'm seeing because we've been asked this by multiple people. And I don't know about you and what your feed is showing, but lately mine is all about these horrible tactics and people are doing like old keyword stuffing types of things
Yep.
with AI, which is ridiculous. You will get punished somehow because you're just going to bloat stuff and your website speed will or be trash and your metadata won't make sense and all that stuff. But I'm kind of seeing this divergence too with that, and I wonder if that's going to create problems for sales and marketing teams and bigger alignment issues down the road, or if I'm just being like crazy.
No, I love where you're going with that. I mean, I think, again, I think me, like have always oversimplified the approach to all these tactics. Because at the end of the day, you never know what's going to change, what business is going to go out of business or be bought, or the formulas or algorithms going to change. There's so many variables in play out of your control. And so my mindset has always been kind of a twofold. Number one is who, as for your company, do you believe would most benefit from your product or services? So you have now your ideal client. And then from there, building your entire strategy on the marketing and sales to best provide value to those people. And so I think when back to your question, it's so hard without a crystal ball, which no one has unfortunately yet, to know exactly what to do. But a really funny story is, my oldest daughter is in town this weekend. She's going to be a senior in college here. Gosh, before we know it, in a few months, which is crazy to me, wrapping up college. And we got in a very interesting debate around AI, for example, at breakfast on this past Friday morning. And she told me within her friend group, which is a decent size of people, she's one of the only ones even using AI. And so I found myself thinking about that. I'm like, I don't understand this. Like, you would think the younger generation are much more comfortable because of all the social media and they don't know how to communicate on a phone, but they sure know how to communicate on social media. How are they not embracing the most amazing, innovation in their lifetime? Besides maybe like cool hardware with, Apple and whatnot. Um, and she's like, honestly, a lot of my friends don't like it. They don't understand it. They don't believe in it. They think it's wrong. I'm like, wow, that's not at all what I expected. And so it got me thinking after breakfast of like, if I was a business and my ideal audience were her generation, I'd be a little worried because now I have to think about having to be the educator to get my ideal client comfortable with all of this because it would scare me to invest so much energy in trying to be getting found on these tools that maybe where they're not going at it. But back to your question and back to what I was saying earlier, my advice always is going to consistently be, unless something significantly changes in our world, is that you always want to focus on your ideal audience and then producing content, especially in areas that you own, which is like your website or your blog, wherever it might be, and then not investing all your eggs in one basket on areas that you are earning or paying for with like social media platforms, because again, you never know what's going to change there. But, if you do a really good job, back to what I was saying before, like leveraging the insights of consumers or customers' needs from kind of a sales point of view and a buyer journey point of view, and you're producing really strategic content and a strategy around those needs, the end of the day, you're very likely going to be rewarded on whatever platforms are going to consume it, because that's what they want to do. I mean, again, you look at like old school Google mindset, people would do like, short, number of keywords, maybe two or three. And then they would hope that Google, whatever, search engine they're using, is going to assume it understands the context. But then you go into what they call like long tail or more question based prompts. And I think, again, most people that are using AI or LMs, they're going on there and they're basically someone like me, they're almost like reading off a novel. They're giving it all this stuff, and then it has to process all of that and figure out what data and sources to pull from to answer the questions. And so I think in the day, my advice would be is it's kind of hard to wake up people and if they're asleep and teach them how to use stuff. But instead, I think if you are taking a step ahead and make sure you're producing content that's going to be perceived as valuable across whatever platforms make the most sense, then I think you'll be rewarded for that based upon how those platforms are consuming data.
Hmm. Just a side thought too, because it's interesting that I have not met a lot of young people using AI, and frankly, people who are like, I didn't know it could do that, and it's not going to take my job. And my friend who's an interior designer sent me this link, and it was an Instagram post, and this guy's like, interior designing is dead. Watch
Oh
this. And it's
gosh.
like, okay, but it doesn't know the measurements. Like we all know AI has limitations when it comes to numbers and things like that. And I'm like, this will not make things look good and it will not be functional. But the point is there's a lot of, fear mongering. But I think where the older generations, meaning I would say anyone with experience and things that drive them freaking nuts, like you and I have automated some really annoying tasks. And I think like if you don't have the experience to know that your skill set is somewhere else and these things are bogging you down, I think it is going to be harder for the younger generation to kind of come up with ways to use it. They're going to have to start in a very different place than we are. And writing, it's just not there yet. And unless you have critical thinking and your own thoughts, then AI is not going to help you in any way, shape, or form. But back to the two-way street that we're facing with buyers, I think this is where marketers have to have a bit of a thick skin. And I struggled with this to hear from my sales team, but I think we are going to be facing a kind of separate buyer situation, maybe not in a vastly different type of experience. Like they're not going to be completely off the rails so far apart that you're going to feel like you have to have two marketing teams. But I do think that there's going to be a bit of a divergence where your sales team is going to be requesting different things and needing things that the LLMs don't. And so part of that is the evolution of the buyer journey in general, is that through all of the, I don't know, content, all of the stuff that marketing produces, you are educating your buyers at basically light speed compared to what you used to do. And so your sales team is going to have to get maybe a lot savvier, maybe a lot more technical if it's like integrations. And I think that's kind of maybe how the evolution in my mind, I see it going, where it's going to be, I want a lot more detailed questions answered, not just from your implementation team. So I think the sales team is going to have to start working even further downstream than just with marketing. I don't know.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think, again, obviously one of our, I think was our last one or the one before that, or a podcast about, being a driver versus a passenger concept. I think, again, right now the media does love to talk about how because of AI, every job in the world is gone. And I just think for me is the one, I think, role that I look at from a business point of view that I think has huge opportunities here are any relationship driven roles. And I think sales obviously is one of those roles that is so critical because people want to buy from people, especially in our world on the B2B side. And so I think for me, it's like, yes, can AI supplement or take away parts of the role of sales? Absolutely. But I think, you being a driver and leveraging it to help you with like preparing for the calls and tech the tools out there like Otter and Fathom and whatever note-taking tools you want to use. And I think back to your point just now, like, the one of the biggest headaches I think a lot of marketing people had is when I ask our sales team to give me information and data, I don't get anything. So I just stop asking because they don't want to help me. And it's not that they don't want to help from my experience, that they're just overwhelmed and they're so focused on, which is probably normal, on their commissions. And so what they need to do to hit their revenue goals so they can make sure they're earning as much money as possible, which obviously the company benefits from that as well. And so whenever you tack on things that seems like just one more thing to do and they don't see the purpose of why they're being asked to provide this information, it just feels like a distraction for them. And so that's where I'm kind of excited about, the marketing team now, if they set up this structure correctly and leverage all the right proper, tools like a HubSpot, and they have all the things plugged in with, using a tool like Fathom to record the calls, and they built some really smart, automations using like Claude Cowork or whatever they want to do. Now the marketing team can maybe play a little less hardball because the data now is being sent to them. And so now I think the mission should be is, okay, I process or consume this data that, my salesperson Bob had on consistently in the last 5 calls. I feel like not only does Bob need some help with maybe some kind of cool, you know, collateral piece that he can follow up with, but also maybe we need to have like a new section on our website that kind of explains our process better because he keeps getting asked over and over again the exact same thing regarding not understanding how we work. And so then I think the marketing person, let's call her Melissa, would then go meet with Bob and be like, "Hey, Bob, I got this really interesting insight from the last couple of calls you had, and I feel like this could be a really valuable tool that can help you close sales faster. Do you agree? And if so, what do you feel is missing?" And I think now all of a sudden, Bob can see the value of how marketing could help. And so rather than it being this like this awkward hardball, you know, lack of alignments, back to that, that networking call I had, I feel like our mission needs to be is becoming this amazing fun bridge. And I'm using fun intentionally because I want it to seem like it's joyful. Is how marketing and sales are one unified team and they're helping each other get across each side as fast as possible to allow the organization to make more money, be able to hire more people, and provide more value to their customer base. And I just feel like with all this going on right now, I think businesses really understanding like where they have some gaps around this stuff and then finding ways to help the sales and marketing teams to work better together, and leveraging technology and tools to make it more efficient. I'm just so beyond excited about that. And I feel like, yes, can AI take away part of those roles? Yes. But I think it's going to allow you to super drive, what you're doing in your role, to be a better driver and helping your organization and yourself.
Yeah, like buyers will be more empowered to be self-qualifiers, and so the other thing too, I mean, this isn't even an enterprise level situation anymore. You can connect Zoom to HubSpot, and at some point with HubSpot's investment in all this data, it will probably start sending, if it does this already, I'm sorry, I don't use the enterprise version. But if at some point it says, hey, just so you know, 90% of your abandoned sales leads happen at blank stage. I think it would be best if you went with blah, blah, blah situation and solution. And I don't see that being all that far away, to be honest with you.
Nope.
It just
I think
needs
it's
more
today.
information, And so, but the problem is then you need someone to like take that and do something with it. And marketers are already scrambling. So, we're a marketing agency and we might sound like we beat up marketers a bit, but our job is really freaking hard and it's moving so fast,
Preach.
but it is so fun. And I think, sales is also going to start feeling it because it's a downstream effect, in my opinion, where marketing is feeling all this crunch and push. And at some point, that new buyer journey, whatever we're going to call it. I mean, I think that phrase probably still holds true for quite a while, but that's going to hit the sales departments in a unique way that I don't know that they're going to know what to do with it just yet. So hopefully marketing teams can really kind of like bite off big chunks and understand the downstream effects of how the buyers are kind of cycling through these changes and prepare the sales team so it doesn't become this fight and the feedback isn't, I don't want to say it's going to be useless from the sales team, but it isn't lame or frustrating feedback that isn't necessarily helping make those closed one deals happen.
I love that. I think to your point, Sarah, when I think about examples of that, again, hopefully every organization should have that, passionate uh, ambassador or champion around all of this stuff, not only in bridging the gap between sales and marketing, but also leveraging all this technology out there to make, again, that hardball type of stuff not be needed, where there's one unified team. But I started to think about that as you were just talking right now, and I'm like, why are we so comfortable and so excited about this? Because it is moving at a gazillion miles per hour. And I think to your point, when I'm reflecting a bit from a few years ago, when me and you embraced it and jumped into it, eyes wide open and both feet, I think it's because we were just frustrated. It's just, it's so time consuming. You can have as many virtual assistants as you want, as far as humans go back in the day, and be like, I need help with answering X, and they can go out there to Google and do all this research. But for me, like my first early adoption time frame or use of like all the various different tools on the AI side, I just was like, this is my thing I'm frustrated about. Am I thinking about it the wrong way? How can I reframe my mind? And then what is a path to me getting this solved in the most efficient way possible? Blah, blah, blah. And it just, no matter what was going on in my life, personally or professionally, or with a family or a friend, or whatever the situation might be, I would just pop into these tools. And I found it for me, the answers always weren't always accurate, because obviously hallucinated a lot a few years ago, but at least helped me get some perspective. And so, as I'm just thinking about this now, as we're wrapping up this podcast show, I think again, marketing and sales, if they aren't embracing this right now, I think a simple thing to do is just think about a frustrating element of your role, and don't worry about the how. Just go into whatever tool you want to use for free tool. Use ChatGPT or Claude. You don't even need the paid one, and just pose the question. My role is X, give it context. I'm super frustrated, annoyed by this. My stupid boss is wanting me to do X, and I have no clue how to even get started.
Are you in my
Wh-
chats? Just kidding.
That's so creepy.
Sorry,
That's so
kidding.
rude. Are you making fun of
Sorry.
me? Mean. Wow, that hurt. You hurt my feeling.
Sorry.
Um, but I think doing that and then it coming out and that I think is so eye-opening, and I think you can then show that to people as far as how this tool can really help make their lives easier, again, both in business and personal. I think that could be a really, really good start to start having some really good dialogue together, and then showing how you could go to the other person, understand things from their point of view, and providing some perspective.
Hmm. Yeah, I have so many ideas for another show, but we'll save that for another day.
Oh, I like it.
Okay. Yeah. All
Well,
right.
thank you.
Well, this was a great show, and if you guys have any questions or want to call us out on some BS or say, listen, how on earth am I supposed to get my sales or marketing team to talk? Ask us. Or we have a book about it. Either one works. So, Jay, this was a great show. Appreciate you.
Thank you. You too. Appreciate it.
Have a
Bye.
great day, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Revenue Rewired podcast. Send us your questions to podcast@stringcaninteractive.com and follow us for more insights to drive your business forward.